Many Pokemon have really cool name origins. So good morning fellas, I'm Matt, and that's what Elias and I are going to check out today. We'll be looking at how a bunch of Pokemon got their English names, but we'll also talk about their names in other languages. Alright, let's get started.
What's up, I'm Elias, and let's start with Nosepass today. Its English name is likely a combination of nose and compass, but there could also be a double meaning there. In the English-speaking world, the cardinal directions are north, west, south, and east, NWSE. But in many Romance languages, the word for west starts with O instead of W, like oeste in Spanish.
So true.
I remember my AP Spanish vocabulary that I learned.
Well done.
So if you use a Spanish, French, or Italian compass, the directions initials will spell out nose when you read them counterclockwise.
Pokemon's names often combine words and ideas from more than one language. That's especially useful because most Pokemon don't get Spanish or Italian names. Those versions of the game just reuse the English names with only a few recent exceptions. So when the localizers are coming up with English names, it's a good idea to keep Spanish and Italian in mind, and come up with some names that work in all three languages, at least to some extent.
Nosepass's name is some combination of nose, north, compass, and magnet in every language. The first half of its French name comes from this word, which is used to describe a big, prominent nose. It's roughly equivalent to the English word schnoz. Yep, that seems about right. Nosepass is 20% nose, and please do not check my math. Its Mandarin name is Chalbaby, which means north-facing nose.
I am also now realizing that I misspelled Mandarin in the script. I don't know how that happened.
No, that was Mandarin, but TF2, which would be a great reference if you understood anything about gamer culture, but you're uncultured swine.
Spinarak's name is most likely a combination of spin and arachnid, but it could also be derived from the word spinneret. That's the name of the organ that produces silk, which spiders use to build webs. Some insects have spinnerets as well, which they use to make their cocoons. Spinarak's name is also very similar to this Afrikaans word, which means spider web. That probably wasn't intentional, but I think it's neat.
Every Eeveelution's English name ends with eon, which is a word that describes a long, indefinite period of time. Sometimes it's defined to be a billion years, but other times it's just anything in that ballpark and beyond. In any case, Eevee is the evolution Pokemon, so the eon suffix could be a reference to how long real-life evolution takes. The first halves of the Eeveelutions names are generally straightforward. They most likely come from the words vapor, flare, jolt, umbra, glacier, leaf, ESP, which is short for extrasensory perception, and
There are a few possible origins for Sylveon's name. It could come from Sylvan, which is an adjective that describes anything related to the woods or rural areas. It could also come from Sylvanus, the Roman deity of the woods. These origins would suggest a woodland fairy sort of vibe, but it could also come from the word sylph, which is a word for air spirits or fairies.
At this point, you might be wondering, gentlemen, if its name were derived from Sylph, then where would the V come from in Sylveon? Well, to cut a long story short, the F and V sounds are made in almost exactly the same way. They're both fricatives, which means you make the sounds by creating a narrow opening in your mouth and pushing air through it. They're also both labiodental sounds. I think maybe we just don't say labiodental in a video. You also create said opening with your top teeth and bottom lip for both sounds. The only difference is that F is a voiceless sound and V is a voiced one. That means you don't use your vocal cords for the former sound and you do for the latter. I can't think of a more sexual sounding non-sexual word, other than like masticate. But labiodental? Come on, brother.
Yeah, labiodental, lips and teeth.
I'm just saying, the jokes are coming.
Most English consonant sounds come in voice and voiceless pairs like this. That includes pairs like sa and za, or tha and the. Sometimes a word will have a voiceless sound, but a related word will have a voiced one instead. To give a few examples, you could have one knife or two knives. If you just got out of the tub, you could say you took a bath, or you could say you bathed. Depending on who you ask, the plural of house could be houses or houses. So sylph morphing into Sylveon would fit in quite nicely with English pronunciation conventions.
Let's zoom back out and talk about the Eeveelutions in general again. The same way we have the eon suffix for their English names, they also have a suffix in common in several other languages. Their French names all end with li, their German names end with a, and their Chinese names end with well, it's complicated. You know, normally this is where I would throw the script back to Matt, but he only knows like 6.5 Chinese words and he can't pronounce any of them properly, so he's fired. I mean, I'm just gonna keep going. In Gens 1 through 6, each Eeveelution's Mandarin name ended with Jingling, which translates to something like elf, spirit, or fairy. Jolteon was Lei Jingling, which roughly means thunder elf. Sylveon's name used to be Xianzi Jingling, which you can translate as fairy fairy, but please don't. But many Pokemon's Chinese names have changed over the years. The first time Pokemon was localized into Chinese was in 1998, when the anime premiered in Hong Kong. By the end of the year, there were 3 different Chinese versions of the show. There were 2 Mandarin dubs, one for mainland China and one for Taiwan, as well as a Cantonese dub for Hong Kong and Macau. Each dub was produced by a different company, and they didn't always use the same names for each Pokemon. Meowth is called Meow Meow in Mandarin, which literally just means meow meow, but this was its Cantonese name, which I can't pronounce. Did you not translate it?
I didn't feel the need
interested?
to.
Okay.
I could not imagine what else that could have possibly been other than meow meow.
The Pokemon games weren't localized into Chinese for many years, but that changed in Generation 7. Nintendo created traditional and simplified Chinese versions of Pokemon Sun and Moon, and unified the species' Chinese names along the way. Now, Meowth's name is written the same way in Mandarin and Cantonese, although the pronunciations still differ. So that brings us back to the Eeveelutions. Eevee used to have different names in Mandarin and Cantonese, but now it's written like this across the Chinese-speaking world. In Mandarin, it's pronounced Yibu. Each Eeveelution's name was changed accordingly as well. Jolteon became Lei Yibu, which means Thunder Eevee, and Sylveon is Xianzi Yibu, where Fairy Eevee.
Hi, remember me? Let's take a look at Gen 5's box legendaries. Zekrom and Reshiram contrast each other in many ways. They represent yin and yang, black and white, and so on forever and ever and ever. We can also find contrasting themes in their names. According to Ken Sugimori, Zekrom and Reshiram are derived from the Japanese words for black and white respectively.
I can't help but notice that you're giving me an awful lot of speaking here and you just have like 2 sentences in between.
To be fair, what was I gonna do? Speak Mandarin for 5 paragraphs?
Sure, man. The beginnings of their names are meant to follow that theme as well. Sugimori said that Zekrom's name starts with Z because it's a hard and strong sound that represents an imposing legendary Pokemon. Reshiram's name starts with, well, it's complicated. There are many different R sounds, also known as rhotic consonants, across the world's languages. Sugimori said that R sounds are softer than Z sounds, which is how the start of Reshiram's name was chosen. That statement isn't really true, but we're gonna move on before we bore you to death by talking about sonority hierarchies. I don't even know what I just read. In any case, Reshiram is lighter and more graceful than Zekrom, which Game Freak wanted to reflect with their names.
Important question, leave a comment. Do you guys like shoveling snow? I'm not the biggest fan, Elias does like it.
Guys, leave a comment if you like sorority hierarchies or whatever the hell I said earlier.
Kyurem's name has several potential inspirations. It might come from this Japanese word, which means rapid cooling. It might also come from this word that means cold, or these words that mean 0 and nothing respectively. Kyurem is an ice type that produces extremely cold energy, so its name could be indirectly referring to absolute 0, which is the lowest possible temperature. Its name ends with REM, which may have been chosen to match the other box legendaries.
Snorlax's name is inspired by The Simpsons, but in a pretty subtle and roundabout way. Bill Giza was a Nintendo employee in the 90s, and he helped bring the Pokemon games to the English-speaking world. Very sorry to Mr. Giza if I pronounced your name incorrectly.
I think it's German, and in German it would be pronounced Giza.
Nob Ogasawara handled the bulk of the localization duties, but Giza was part of the team that came up with English Pokemon names for Gen 1.
Snorlax's name is a combination of the words for snore, lax, lackadaisical, and relax. According to Daniel Dockery's book Monster Kids, Giza was inspired by the Simpsons episode Lisa's Wedding, which premiered shortly before he started working on Pokemon games. At the beginning of the episode, Chief Wiggum is seen at the Renaissance Fair, showing off mythological beasts. Except no, he's not.
Wiggum shows Lisa a 2-headed hound with only 1 head, as well as the Esquilax, which is a horse with the head of a rabbit and the body of a rabbit. Giza really resonated with that joke for reasons he can't entirely explain, so the name Esquilax was stuck in his head when he was coming up with Pokemon names. He wanted to give a Pokemon a name that ends in lax, and it wound up being this guy.
In Japanese, Snorlax's name is inspired by another Nintendo game instead. Shortly before the release of Sword and Shield, Game Informer's Brian Shea interviewed Junichi Masuda, as well as Shigeru Omori. After writing a cover story about the upcoming games, Shea asked them a bunch of less serious questions. According to Masuda and Omori's answers, some people in the Pokemon world have outdated Pokedex models, the same way some people in real life use phones that are a few years old. They also said that the inside of a Pokeball is like a high-end hotel, and humans eating rare candies might make them more intelligent and studious. You have like an iPhone 15, right?
I don't even remember.
I've got a 13, and yours is newer than mine.
Shea also asked if characters like Yoshi and Kirby are Pokemon, and Masuda said no, but he went on to mention that Snorlax is named after Kirby in Japanese. Snorlax is directly inspired by longtime Game Freak employee Koji Nishino. He was infamous for eating a lot, then falling asleep, which is very Snorlax-esque behavior. During the development of Gen 1, Nishino's co-workers dubbed him Kirby because of his big appetite, and the nickname carried over to Snorlax's Japanese name.
Like we mentioned earlier, many Pokemon names are a mishmash of different languages. Boltund is likely derived from the English word bolt, as well as this word, which means dog in a variety of Germanic languages, like German, Norwegian, Swedish, and Danish. Said word also has a cognate in English in the form of hound.
Oh boy, I've got to say the O word, please hold. Oregano. Boltund's Japanese name likely comes from this onomatopoeic word. I did it. Boltund's Japanese name likely comes from this onomatopoeic word for barking. Onomatopoeic might be the worst word in the English language, but I've just nailed it 3 times in a row, but we keep using it in these scripts anyways. Onomatopoeic make it 4. The first half of its name may be the English word pulse, which could be a reference to another Game Freak developed game. Onomatopoeic, that's 5. And I'll stop there to avoid the 6.
Oh my god. Pulse Man is a Sega Mega Drive game that came out in 1994. The titular main character is the son of a scientist and the AI he fell in love with. Oh boy, that's, awfully topical these days, isn't it? The scientist's name is Doc Yoshiyama, and he becomes evil after spending too much time in the digital world. That is also very relevant in the modern day. You take control of Pulse Man, and your job is to platform through the game and defeat his dad. Pulse Man can harness the power of electricity, so it's a logical character to reference an electric Pokemon's name. But it's also possible this is a complete nothing burger. At the end of the day, the word pulse is associated with electricity in many contexts, so the Pulse Man stuff could be a coincidence. Anytime you watch a video about Pokemon origins, it's going to be a mixture of facts and theories, so you should always take them with a grain of salt.
Boltund's Korean name is very similar to its Japanese one. It also comes from the English word pulse, followed by a different onomatopoeia for barking. That's 6. Its Mandarin name is 竹电犬, which comes from a word for dog, as well as this phrase. It's a figure of speech that means making progress very quickly, but a more literal translation would be chasing the wind and lightning. So anyways, I was watching this Northern Lion video, and he went, like every 6 or 7, people in chat were like, oh my god, 6, 7, 6, 7. And he was like, oh, 6, 7. True, so true, 6, 7. He just moved on.
I think that might be the right way to respond, honestly.
Yeah, it's just like, oh yeah, 6, 7, okay.
Oh wow, look at that. I need to stress everybody that labiodental is not a sexual word in any way, shape, or form.
Neither is mastication.
There's not much of a reason for me to use the word masticate in a Pokemon video.
What? You don't say, Growlithe used bite, and Growlithe pounced on the other Pokemon and started masticating on its head, bro.
Maybe we should move on. Where am I? Hold on a sec. Lilac is on the computer.
If you very gently push, the back of her back legs, the cats move forward.
Okay, there we go.
It's kind of uncomfortable for them.
I found Lilac's A button.
Onomatopoeia, make that 7 in a row, and that's 6, 7. So true.